This episode recaps the
misinformation
over whether to approve or deny the revisions to the charter at OCSCS. This information led to a variety of pleas from students, parents, and teachers at OCSCS, but none was more convincing and responsible for these comments than those of Dr. Beth Fisher, currently principal at OCSCS and the one responsible for writing the charter and its revisions. Dr. Fisher encouraged members from the OCSCS community to attend the meeting to speak out, and the comments range from
15 resident of Yorba Linda, proud parent and OCSCS student. We are a first year family in PYL USD because our daughter loves this school.
To this.
Sure, piece of shit you made.
As classless as this last clip is, we don't entirely fault the people for their comments because they've been fed garbage information, and it appears the greatest source of this garbage is Dr. Fisher herself. For example, on January 4th, she sent a message to OCSCS families in which she made multiple false claims. For example, she claimed she wanted to dispel rumors that the revisions were rushed and inadequately prepared. Yet in November, when asked if Parkview teachers were notified that they were being absorbed into OCSCS, this was her response.
So I submitted the charter on Thursday. I believe it was Thursday, right? All the days run together. I have 100-hour work weeks, so
Thursday.
It was Thursday?
I'm pretty sure it's Thursday.
So prior to, by nature of how things go and word travels very quickly, I did not want our staff to hear that we were putting forward a charter revision.
Here's Dr. Fisher wondering why people are questioning the revisions now in January, but not back in December.
I'll point out key facts, okay? When we talk about not being supportive to the charter and people who are. Some of the findings that were presented in December have to do with our original petition. So I am questioning, why were those not brought up last year? Were those brought up now because people want to make it difficult for this charter?
And here's Ms. Suki Aluwalia, a charter authorizer attorney with 30 years of experience, explaining what the board was receiving.
I'm going to talk about a couple of different documents because there's not a single document that the board is being asked to consider. There are a number of documents. So this process started on November 14th with the submission of a clean document and a red line document. Unfortunately, those two documents were not the same, but nevertheless, on November 19th, there was a revised document that was submitted. And then at the December 10th board meeting, there was a document called Guide to Revisions that was submitted, which purported to respond to the district staff findings and made a number of fundamental changes that are not part of the charter petition. That document was now further revised, I believe earlier, or last week or earlier this week. So at the present time, you don't have a single coherent document on which to even take action.
So, if it wasn't rushed, why wasn't there one coherent document, and why was it still being revised so late in the game? And how was the board supposed to ask questions in December about changes made in January? Fisher also claimed that the revision was the only way for OCSCS to get charter school grant money and raise its own funds, which she doubled down on in her unhinged screed during last week's meeting.
I heard some misinformation that needs to be clarified. Oh, you can get charters, you can get grants, no matter what in your structure. I am more than happy, or do a PRA. It's not going to be the first time people do it to me. Do a PRA. You will find in my email from the charter division that we were denied grants because of our budgeting structure. Department Chair Phil Seitz, Department Chair Michelle Dateweiler were in the room with me when I was on the phone with the charter division for a second time.
And here's the truth.
Right. So first of all, to the question that was raised earlier, what other kinds of money can this charter get? There are a lot of foundations, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Walton Foundation, a lot of those organizations that have grant monies that are specifically available to charters. And they don't necessarily take a look at the operational structure or the governance structure. So I would strongly encourage OCS to look into at least those two. If they work with California Charter Schools Association, they can provide them, numerous other references. The grant monies that have been discussed are those grant monies that are federal grant monies that are then dispersed to CDE, and then CDE takes those grant monies and disperses them to the charters.
One of the reasons they need more money is they're overstaffed. If you aren't sure about this, here's Dr. Stein explaining during December's board meeting.
Some of the major shifts that you see are the revenue is obviously different because when it was initially brought to the board, there was an assumption that there would be 800 students. What we're seeing now is 738, so that's going to be a considerable drop in revenues. It's about $700,000 less. The expenditures, yes, so the staffing did go up. I noticed that as well, specifically on the classified side. But that and the one-time expenditures, I would not expect that to be an annual ongoing thing.
Here are budget documents showing the expenses for staff. You know what other schools have to do when they're overstaffed? Get rid of staff. Does it suck? Yes. However, these principals don't get to perform in front of the public to try to strong-arm the board. Perhaps the biggest false claim is that OCSCS would remain a dependent charter, in other words, under PYLUSD control. Here's Fisher explaining this claim in the most condescending display.
Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of check for understanding. Turn and talk to your partners for no more than 15 seconds. By making these changes if they are approved, are we an independent charter or are we a dependent charter? Turn and talk to your neighbors. Okay. Please stand up if your partner said dependent charter. Okay, you will notice that these are the people who have taken the time to get informed. We did not make the request to become an independent charter. By requesting these changes, give me, and no other fingers, we do teach middle school, give me a thumbs up if this change results in us remaining a dependent charter, a thumbs down if we become independent. Let's check for understanding. Thank you. Now that 100% of us, and if you see a friend who did not raise their hand because they're shy, let them know they can have the courage to speak in the class. Reminder, we are dependent charter. Recursive learning is very important, guys. We can always revisit what we've learned. We are a dependent charter.
And here's Alawalia explaining how wrong Fisher is.
Currently, at this time, without the approval of the material revisions, this is what's called a dependent charter school. With respect to the most significant change that is being proposed is the the creation of a separate 501c3 corporation. And all of the roles of the operations, the duties, responsibilities of the operations, the hiring, etc., everything would be transferred to that separate 501c3 corporation. By having that governance structure, that makes it an independent charter school.
Also, Dr. Fisher inadvertently received an email from Renee Gray in which she shared some of the board's legal strategy with outside charters, not OCSCS. What did Fisher do? She used it to fan the flames. Here's Gray's email that was shared on PYL News You Can Use. We wonder where they got that email. Gray was clearly referring to Magnolia and CRLA as common enemies, not OCSCS. Dr. Fisher has a degree in English, yet she's parsing words to create chaos because she likely calculated that it was to her benefit, which made her plea on January 4th to families to speak with a member of the OCSCS staff or advisory board laughable. How could the staff or advisory board members be informed when the author of the charter and its revisions was so clearly misinformed? Fisher was contradicted multiple times during this meeting. At various points in this soap opera, she had the chance to explain and quell misconceptions about the board vote, but failed to do so at various opportunities, begging the questions. Did she make these claims because she was ignorant about the revision's impact, or did she lie? We can't say for sure, but whatever she was doing wasn't leadership. In her closing comments, she had this to say.
I don't actually care what happens to me. I don't actually care what anybody says about me or what is posted, because in order to make change, you have to be willing to do difficult things. And over and over and over again, I will fight for my kids. I will fight for you, Maddie. I don't know if Jane's still here. I don't know if the boys are. I will fight for you, baby girl.
But if you really want the truth, know that she's doing all this for one person, herself.